Today, we're diving into the story of a kingdom teetering on a knife's edge. You've got the thrones of Judah and Israel, and they are in constant peril, just being eaten away by corruption from the inside and threatened by powerful enemies on the outside. It's a really raw look at faith and failure, of God's promises and, well, devastating human pride. So let's get right into it. And right from the jump, we start with a question that honestly sounds like it's been ripped from a modern thriller. Because at the start of our story, the biggest threat to the throne of David, it isn't some foreign army. It's the Queen Mother herself.
The scene is just one of pure brutality. Athaliah, the Queen Mother, finds out her son, King Ahaziah, is dead, and her next move is just horrifying. The text says she arose and destroyed all the royal seed. We're talking about her own grandchildren. She tries to wipe out the entire Davidic line, the very lineage God promised would last forever, all so she can grab the throne for herself. That huge promise is now hanging by a thread, just one hidden child away from being completely extinguished.
So here's how we're going to walk through this incredible saga. We've got 5 acts. We'll see a promise that's miraculously preserved, a king's reforms that are well-intentioned but, deeply flawed. We'll see a surprising moment of divine mercy for a wicked nation, a devastating fall caused by pride, and finally, a kingdom just spiraling into absolute chaos.
Okay, let's kick things off with Act 1, A Promise Preserved. This is really the story of the usurper queen Athaliah going head-to-head with the one royal heir who escaped her murderous purge, a little boy who would become the hidden king.
So for 6 long years, this young prince, Joash, is hidden away right inside the temple itself, protected by his aunt and the high priest, a man named Jehoiada. Then, in the 7th year, Jehoiada puts this brilliant counter-coup into motion. He secretly gets the military leaders together inside the temple and makes a covenant with them. And then, the big reveal. He presents the king's son, proving the true heir is still alive. He then does something really smart. He arms the guards with King David's own sacred spears and shields, symbolically linking this new king back to the kingdom's glory days. As he crowns the boy, the people just erupt, shouting, "God save the king!" It's a masterful plan, and it's executed perfectly.
Well, Athaliah hears all the noise from the celebration, and she rushes to the temple. She sees the young king standing by the pillar, which was the custom, surrounded by princes and trumpeters. And in that moment, she realizes she's been overthrown. She tears her clothes and just screams, "Treason! Treason!" But it's too late. Her reign is over. On Jehoiada's orders, she's dragged out of the holy temple and executed.
And with Athaliah gone, Jehoiada immediately gets to work on a national restoration. He renews the covenant, which is this powerful declaration that the king and the people belong to the Lord. And this just sparks a movement among the people. They themselves go and tear down the temple of the false god Baal, smashing its altars and images. The Davidic line is secure, and for a little while, true worship is restored in Judah.
Now we move on to Act 2, Reforms and Compromise. The hidden boy king, Joash, is now a man on the throne. But his reign, it introduces a theme that is going to haunt Judah for generations: the danger of a good king's critical flaw.
So Joash reigns for a long time, 40 years in Jerusalem. But the text tells us something very specific about him. It says he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord all his days, wherein Jehoiada the priest instructed him. You see the catch? His righteousness was directly tied to his godly mentor.
This slide really shows the sharp contrast of his reign. On one hand, the good is truly impressive. He organizes this massive nationwide project to repair the Lord's temple, which had been neglected and desecrated. But then there's the bad, and it reveals a critical failure. See, after his mentor Jehoiada dies, his reign completely unravels. He ends up bribing an attacking enemy with the very temple treasures he helped restore, and ultimately his own servants conspire against him and assassinate him. That promising start ends in total disaster.
And right here, we find the crucial flaw, summed up in a phrase that becomes this tragic chorus for so many of Judah's kings. But the high places were not taken away. Now, these weren't just some harmless local shrines. They represented a fundamental compromise. God's law was clear. Worship was supposed to be centralized at the Jerusalem temple to ensure its purity. By letting these pagan-influenced sites stick around, Joash allowed a kind of spiritual cancer to fester, a divided loyalty that would have devastating consequences down the line.
Okay, for Act 3, we're shifting our focus. We're heading north to the Kingdom of Israel for a story about mercy amidst decline. Here, a dying prophet gives one final, very dramatic warning to a faithless king.
So at the same time, the northern kingdom of Israel is just deep in idol worship. They're following this pattern of the sins of Jeroboam. That's the state-sponsored idolatry that had corrupted the kingdom from the very beginning. And because of this, God allows Syria to viciously oppress them. But even then, when their king, Jehoahaz, cries out, the Lord listens. He shows them mercy, not because they deserve it, but because of his unbreakable covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He actually sends them a savior, a military deliverer, to give them some relief.
And then, the story takes this fascinating turn. The next king of Israel, who also happens to be named Joash, visits the prophet Elisha on his deathbed. Elisha tells him to take a bow and shoot an arrow out the window, and as he does, Elisha declares, "The arrow of the Lord's deliverance from Syria." It's this powerful symbolic act, a prophecy of a coming victory.
But then comes the test. Elisha tells the king, "Okay, now take the arrows and strike the ground with them." So the king strikes the ground 1, 2, 3 times, and then he just stops. And the man of God is furious with him. He says the king should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times, which would have meant a complete and total victory over Syria. But because he only did it 3 times, his victory would be incomplete. It's such a powerful lesson. Half-hearted faith and obedience, they lead to a limited blessing.
Act 4 is a textbook case of pride before the fall. The story of King Amaziah of Judah is a perfect example of how a leader's arrogance can bring ruin on an entire nation. So like his father Joash, Amaziah starts out doing what's right, but he also left those high places standing. And after a big military victory against Edom, his heart is lifted up. He gets arrogant. And in his pride, he sends a challenge to the much more powerful king, Jehoash of Israel, saying, "Come, let us look one another in the face." It's a direct challenge to go to war, and it's driven entirely by his ego. The king of Israel's response has got to be one of the most brutal takedowns in the entire Bible. He sends back this parable. He says a little thistle, that's Amaziah, sent a message to a mighty cedar tree, that's himself, demanding a marriage alliance. But then a wild beast just happened to walk by and trampled the little thistle into the dust. I mean, the message couldn't be clearer. You are insignificant. Stay home before you get yourself and everyone else hurt.
Of course, Amaziah doesn't listen, and the consequences are catastrophic. Judah gets crushed in battle. King Amaziah himself is captured. The king of Israel marches to Jerusalem, breaks down a huge section of its defensive wall, and loots all the gold and silver from both the temple and the king's palace. Years later, just like his father, Amaziah is assassinated in a conspiracy. His pride led directly to national humiliation and his own death.
And that brings us to our final act, a kingdom in chaos. And here we witness the terrifyingly rapid implosion of the northern kingdom of Israel.
Look at this timeline. It's just a horrifying blur of bloodshed and instability. King after king is assassinated by his successor in this dizzying spiral of violence. Zechariah is on the throne for 6 months, assassinated. His killer, Shallum, lasts just 1 month before he's also killed. This isn't just political instability, it's total anarchy. The kingdom is literally tearing itself apart from the inside, with bloody coups becoming the normal way to transfer power. And all this internal chaos leaves Israel incredibly vulnerable. And right on cue, a new superpower, Assyria, is rising in the east. The king of Assyria comes against the land, and the Israelite king can only stop him by paying a massive tribute of silver. A little later, the next Assyrian king invades and starts deporting Israelites. The writing is on the wall. The end is near.
So when you step back and look at this whole saga, what are the big takeaways? Well, 4 key themes really emerge. First, God's incredible covenant faithfulness. He preserves the line of David against all odds. Second, the danger of partial obedience, showing us that even good reforms are bound to fail when core compromises are just ignored. Third, God's surprising mercy, which he offers even to undeserving kings who cry out to him. And finally, a really stark warning about the destructive power of pride.
This whole period of history is just filled with failure, compromise, and chaos. And it kind of leaves us with this lingering question. In a world that so often seems to mirror this pattern of human failure, where do we actually find signs of an enduring hope? This story suggests the answer isn't found in the crumbling thrones of human kings, but in the unbreakable covenant of God.